Hi there, Paul Carson here with Philadelphia Mortgage Brokers, and one of the biggest pieces of getting pre-approved to buy a home and get approved to buy a mortgage is your employment history. So for most folks who are using income to qualify for their loan, that income is associated with a job of some sort. Talking about how different people get paid in different jobs is a big part of the picture. So big questions with first-time buyers is it possible to get a mortgage or a pre-approval done without a 2-year job history? Now, it's not a blanket answer for everybody. Each scenario is unique, but I wanted to take some time and go into details about some different scenarios of what people are looking at when they're getting ready to buy their first house. So let's take an example of someone who just graduated from college and is recently on a new job. Let's say they got out of business school and they're 6 months into a entry-level customer service job making $36,000 a year. So it's a pretty easy scenario there. That person's going to be able to qualify for using their income of $3,000 a month on that new job. So as long as they've been on that job and they went to business school and they got a job in that same related line of work in that field, that's the consistency of, so even though they were only on that job so far for 6 months, we would use to fill out the complete 2-year work history is their college education. So we'd actually list their college education of however long they were there as their previous employer. So even though they weren't making any money while they were earning at college, studying and getting their degree, the good part about it is working towards your field of study and obviously landing a job in your field of study after college and starting that. This is a very easy scenario where somebody gets paid a salary, gets a paycheck, and it's pretty vanilla. So that's kind of the best case scenario of not 2 years on the job, but the consistency is there, maybe you graduated. So now we're gonna talk about switching jobs but staying in the same general line of work. So let's say that same accountant that we were talking about before they went from company A, now they're working at company B. If they have the same job, different company, and they're making the same or more money, that's the best case scenario, especially if they're a salaried W-2 position and staying with a salaried full-time W-2 position. Where things get complicated is when you go from salaried in W-2 to possibly not full-time or possibly a 1099 contract position, and things change. So consistency is key when we're looking to paint the picture of a 2-year work history, something that's consistent and stable and predictable. And ultimately is, from a risk perspective, on the mortgage side, it's most folks, we look at it from the perspective of any job you have, there's the likelihood of continuance for the next 3 years. You can figure that out later. Switching jobs, same general field. The main thing to consider is if you're staying in the same general field, as long as everything's consistent, it shouldn't, most often cases, cause any issues. But definitely you want to check with your loan officer and ask any questions up front before you make those jobs move. Let's take an example where someone is, let's say you're that accountant and all of a sudden you just want to go open up a restaurant. It's completely different industries and you're going to start fresh. You go from being the accountant and now you're working as the a manager of a restaurant. So while it might be a different field, there might have to be a certain time of period on the new job, maybe 3 or 6 months, because of the change of industry, to be able to use that new income for work. Not to say that every situation would fall into that category, but oftentimes major switches and changes of direction that can cause some kind of incontinuity there is a little bit of a challenge. So one of the other topics when we're talking about employment and using employment income to qualify are gaps in employment history. So let's say a mom was in the workforce and then took a few years off to stay home with the kids and now is back in the workforce. We might have a gap of a few years of employment. Let's take that ideal example of the job that the mom left, came back to that same job. Let's assume same company, same rate of pay, all of that. As long as they go back to that type of position a couple years later, we can still, even though there's a gap of a few years there, we can use that example to tie back to the previous work history before she took a few years off to stay home with the kid. Just because there is that gap in there doesn't mean that necessarily prevents you from moving forward on something like that. At the same time too, if you've been out of the workforce for a period of time and are getting back into it, maybe it's been a prolonged period of unemployment. Obviously the past few years have been very challenging for many folks in terms of switching jobs, having forced out of jobs and trying to figure out what's next in careers. So we do see a lot of examples where folks are jumping around to more jobs than they necessarily want. It's the job of a loan officer to get all the details together, help paint that picture, minimize and show. As long as the consistency is there, let's say somebody takes the first job, let's say somebody has 4 jobs within a 2-year period. That might be a lot from an underwriting perspective and seem a little shaky. But in the past few years, that wouldn't be abnormal. If this wasn't pre-COVID, having 4 jobs in 2 years might be a little crazy, but in these times where things have shifted and somebody had to make a move to improve their situation, maybe take a bit of a pay increase or move to a better location or make a positive improvement for their work environment. When it comes to gaps in work history, just because there is a gap in work history doesn't mean you're automatically not going to be able to qualify. Best to reach out to a loan officer, especially someone on our team who knows how to ask the right questions, paint the right picture, and really put it together so you can get to a situation. And even if you're in a situation where you might not be able to get approved today, what lies ahead and how long would it take to get to a position? And maybe it's only a few weeks or a few months down the road to become ready to be pre-approved or get ready to buy that first house. So if you have questions about employment history, gaps within employment history, switching jobs, anything related to income, employment, and how it pertains to getting mortgage, reach out to us on our team at Philadelphia Mortgage Brokers. You can find us at phillymb.com.